Welcome to The Verdict. Mick, Cornett, and Kenneth Meyers. We're here every week, as you know, dealing with topical issues and getting people more information about things they care about. We're going to welcome in a good guest today.
Yes, we have not had the Honorable Ken Stoner on before. He is a district judge here in Oklahoma County, and he presides over the DUI and drug court. And we're going to be talking about what he does, how he does it, and how things are going with him.
It's coming up on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
Right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Military service ran in my blood, starting from my father, which joined the Navy, on the Chickasaw side, my uncle, which served in the United States Army. I'm Benjamin Espinosa, Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, and I'm Chickasaw. I went to the Secretary of Defense's staff at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., which ultimately led to becoming a combat support technician for Naval Special Warfare, specifically SEAL Team 10. I think to be proud and to love your tribe, to love being Chickasaw, you also have to love being American. You also have to love everything that America stands for. Equality, perseverance, professionalism, and power. I want my family to know that their father is a good person, but also feels that he has an obligation to the country and to love this nation. Anything worth having is worth dying for. The military and the country owes me nothing. I owe it everything.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick, Cornett with Kenneth Meyers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
We are really pleased to bring to you today the Honorable Kenneth Stoner. He's an Oklahoma County District Judge, has been since 2018. His jurisdiction is over the DUI and drug court in Oklahoma County and perhaps a little bit beyond. He did his undergraduate work at East Central University, and OSU, did his law work at the University of Oklahoma. And I was telling Judge Stoner, I have to be careful about how highly I praise the guest who happens to also be a judge, that people will assume I'm trying to curry favor. I'm not really doing. I mean this. I've not seen a better resume for a law student ever. While Judge Stoner was at the University of Oklahoma, if there was an award based on merit, he won it. Starting just from top 3% of his class, outstanding law student, and on and on and on. It just goes almost without end. Very, very impressive. He, after practicing law, after graduating, had a broad legal experience, including experience with the district attorney's office before his service on the bench. He has been active in mediation activities, settling controversies through mediation. He developed what I will ask him to describe to us as the Shift and Groove virtual reality tool. That's Shift and Groove virtual reality tool. And he founded Seneca House, a nonprofit living house for men with difficulties that need some help. He is well respected in the legal community, and he's got not only a lot of knowledge, he's got a great sense of humor. Judge, glad to see you.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be on your show.
You have figuratively rolled up your sleeves. Sounds like you've been rolling up your sleeves and getting to work for quite some time. Why were you such a competitive student?
Well, actually, I love the law, and I'm actually kind of competitive, so I like to do well. And I just find it, it's interesting. and I just I get into these topics, and I enjoy learning, and that's probably has served me well on the bench because a certain area of addiction, mental health, it is layered and complex, and it really, you've got to want to try to understand it. It's evolving, it's changing a lot, our understanding of that. So I'm naturally curious. I guess I was blessed with that, and it helps helps me do well in law school. So I did thank you for your kind words about that.
You're mentioning that it's evolving. Have you been part of that evolution? Have you been someone who's out there thinking, we probably ought to be doing this differently?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I got very involved in, I don't know if you've ever watched TED Talks on TED.com.
Yeah.
I got involved in the TED community about 13, 14 years ago when it was first starting, and I've been to 7 TED conferences nationally, the big TED conferences. And I started listening to some of the neuroscientists there. And when you're around innovators and people that are thinking differently about problems, it kind of rubs off on you. And so, when I come back to Oklahoma City after being at a TED conference and listening to some of these neuroscientists, these behavior scientists, and trying to understand why do we do what we do, and you layer that on top of my experience of being around the courthouse. So, I started my career as assistant DA. And when I was there, I would handle a lot of different kinds of cases, but it's pretty quickly you realize whether it was a stolen car or a stolen property or whatever it was, so much of it underneath was substance use, abuse, addiction, and yet we really are not been well calibrated to address that. And so as our understanding of the brain and has evolved and helped us understand why we do what we do, I start looking at our criminal justice system and thinking, wow, this is not particularly well calibrated to address that issue based on how we understand it currently. And so that's where I kind of became interested in trying to understand it. I got very inspired by a guy well, Chris Steele, because I for a long time
he's been on this show a few times.
Several times. Yeah.
Well, being professionally in the criminal justice as a prosecutor, that system, I could see, and there's the contours, well, really what needs to change. But man, trying to change something like that, it's just it would take a lot. And it was actually Chris Steele, whenever he came out and say, look, we could do a lot better. And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad somebody else is saying this because I've often thought the same way. But unless you get a number of people and a little bit of political will behind that, we're just not going to change. And so whenever, it just wasted effort, frankly, but whenever he took the lead, I thought, I'm going to hop in this as well and start using my voice and my experience around this population, addicted population. And I started a company called Shift Groove. And Shift Groove, it was a virtual reality. Virtual reality was just coming out, and was thinking about how can we use technology to help us with this problem of addiction. And the idea was you take someone in a virtual reality setting and you help them experience what it feels like to have a craving for their drug or alcohol. So if someone's in recovery, and the traditional method of dealing with that is of dealing with a craving, you sit with your therapist and you talk about it hypothetically. Well, so hypothetically, whenever you have a craving, what are you going to do? And you think through, well, here's my options and here's how I'm going to do it. Well, with virtual reality, now you can have this immersive experience where you can make someone really feel like in there, and you can induce a craving in a therapeutic setting. So you can actually have them experience a craving while sitting with their therapist, and the therapist begins to work it through it, but without the risk of being in the wrong place, around the wrong people, or having the substance there in front of you. And so that was the idea behind Shift Groove. And so there's actually a TEDxOU talk on that. So if anybody wants to see, if your viewer wants to see it, you can Google Ken Stoner TEDxOU addiction, and you'll see a 18-minute talk about addiction and about how virtual reality can be a tool to address that. And so that was back in probably 2017 when I did that. But the efforts to create that product and get it off the ground kind of took a different turn when I got appointed by the governor to be a district judge to preside over our diversion programs. And so that project kind of got put on the back burner and never quite came to a marketable product. And of course, the way technology is now, there's other companies out there that have kind of picked up that mantle, and they're developing that technology. And so I think there's really some real reasons to be optimistic about addiction treatment, some emerging technologies, and frankly, even some of our artificial intelligence, that we're to be sobriety coaches and to be more present with somebody as they're working in recovery, building recovery.
How did it come about that you were assigned to the DUI and drug court here in Oklahoma County, and is your jurisdiction limited to Oklahoma County?
Well, I was appointed as a district judge, and that means I do have, I'm appointed or elected, but whenever I sought the position, I frankly didn't think I was going to get it, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk to a lot of city leaders or community leaders about, I've been around the courthouse for a long time. I think this is an area that needs a lot of attention as far as really prioritizing our diversion programs and making some, we'll say, modernization efforts in how we address addiction and mental health. And so I thought, well, at least if I'm going to be out campaigning for a judge, I'll at least be able to get people to listen to me. I'm going to be a finalist, so maybe like, well, this guy. So I just started telling my story. I had people that were very receptive, like Trish Everest and, Mr. Bennett, Clay Bennett, and other people. I was saying, this is what I think would be possible if we had a more of a modern approach to addiction. And so that's why I was seeking the position to try to provide a leader inside the courthouse to say these programs are really as or more important than anything else we do. And so whenever I was appointed, I fortunately got through that process, the Judicial Nominee Commission, appointed by the governor to serve a term, and I just asked for it. Can I have would you please assign me, our presiding judge, assign me these programs and let me work with those? And so we have a drug court, a DUI court, and we also have gotten a grant to start a veterans treatment court. And there's a program probably pretty well called Remerge. It's a program for mothers who would be otherwise prison bound. We work with them with a lot of support, encouragement, but also accountability to help change behavior. So that became really where I was assigned, and I've been there for the last 5 years working on those programs.
It seems like you recognize the private sector as part of the solution.
Absolutely, yeah. Nothing happens unless everybody's on board, and that includes, we got to get our government leaders, our city leaders, to think, hey, this is important. As by analogy, I was thinking one day about how is it that OU has a national championship caliber football team? Who decides that? Well, is it the coach? Is it the players? Is it the president of the university, the athletic director? Is it the fans? It's actually everybody. Everybody says this is really important. We want to have a fantastic national championship caliber program. That's what I want to say. In our community, all of us ought to want and realize it's just not possible. I mean, it's not just it's possible. If we wanted to, we could, instead of being known for our high incarceration rates, we could be known for the skill of our diversion professionals and the quality of our diversion programs. They actually cost far less and they're far more effective. So whenever you compare it to, for a certain population, if you have the right population, I mean, somebody who has a moderate to severe substance use disorder, and it's generally not violent, so there are definitely people that need to be in prison that are predatory and frightening, but there's a lot of people that we could skillfully work with them, still hold them accountable, give them a high level of supervision, but also a high level of treatment, and look at that individual more holistically, and how do you set them on the right path.
Kenneth Stoner is a district judge in Oklahoma County, works in the drug court area. We'll be right back.
At Whitten Burridge, we're litigators. That's all we do. All of our clients, some sort of wrong has occurred to them. We try to right that wrong. Corporate America, they have all the power. It's sort of like going against an army. I like helping the underdog. That's what gets me up out of bed every day.
Our success rate is phenomenal, but that's not all they get. We care about people.
I'm very proud of what we've been able to do for our clients, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do in the future. There's still a lot of wrongs that need to be righted.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams ranked number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
One of the best kept secrets about the post 9/11 GI Bill benefit is that it can be used at a trade school or a technical school, and it doesn't have to be used at a university or college. These are benefits that the veterans have earned through their service, and they should take advantage of it.
Veterans really need to understand that there are many resources offered by the Oklahoma Department of Veteran Affairs. They are there to help you find the right school for you, the school that will help you and your family make great steps into your future.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and our guest is Judge Kenneth Stoner.
Judge, can you explain to our viewers kind of from the bottom up, how does the program work that you supervise?
Yeah. So these drug courts, they're really quite different than, they're designed differently, and our philosophy is different than a traditional adversarial courtroom. You know, adversarial courtrooms, the parties are arguing with each other. A drug court is it's a longer term program where everybody in that the team, you have a team approach, a multidisciplinary team. So you have therapists, you have probation officers, you have the DA, public defender, or sheriff's office. Everybody that's on that team looks at this individual. It's considered the highest level of supervision in the criminal justice system. And so the people who come into the program, to qualify for the program, you have to be prison bound. That means this is not someone who's a first offender or a second offender. It's usually they've had multiple chances at probation and they failed, or they've been to prison once or twice and they're back again. But they've been identified as someone who has at least a moderate to severe substance use disorder, and they want to change. And of course, they're not in this rape, robbery, murder category. It's usually property offenses and sort of these little mid-level, I don't call them lower level offenses, because if someone's breaking into your house or you're breaking in, stealing your car, you stolen car, stolen property, things like that is probably the most common type cases. Instead of sending them to prison, let's try to address the underlying issue that got them to the courthouse to begin, which is the addiction. And the addiction usually is, some people like to oversimplify it. Well, it's just the meth, or it's just the alcohol. It's like, well, it is, but it's actually, addiction is what they call a systems issue. It's not just one thing. It's, the way I like to think about it is, if you've ever been stuck out on I-40 in a traffic jam, and you got 3 lanes of traffic, you can't move, and as far as up in front of you, you can't move. But if you think about the drug is, the substance is the thing that's blocking you from going forward. That's the methamphetamine. Well, if they just would quit, then they'd be better. It's like, well, yeah, but that car can't move until the car in front of that can move. And that one can't move until the car in front of that one can move. So you got to look at what's their traffic jam, and see if you can get that traffic jam moving so the drug or alcohol can get out of the way. And so you start looking at, so the whole team in a drug court their whole purpose is problem solving, which is, okay, do they have safe, stable, sober housing? They still living with somebody in an inappropriate neighborhood. They have access to employment. They have access to treatment. Some people have good job training, but the problem is they just can't get along with their coworkers. That's why they can't keep a job. And so we work on mood regulation or de-escalation, and just trying to give someone treatment, support. These programs, they last about 18 to 24 months. Some people take as long as 3 years to graduate, but it's a very high level of supervision. You've got 10 random drug tests a month, 10 drug tests a month, and it's random. So whenever someone comes to the program, they're assigned a color, and the day their color's called, they have to come down and test. They're usually notified before 7 o'clock in the morning. They have all day to come down. And they also have a treatment provider, a therapist, a case manager, a supervisor. And in the beginning, we see them in court every week. And we work on changing the behavior with small sanctions or small incentives. So instead of, okay, you failed the program, you relapsed, okay, you go to prison. No, it's like, okay, let's figure out why you relapsed. Why are you using? What do you need? Do you need more peer support? Do you need to change your housing? So we give them support, encouragement, but also accountability. So we address that behavior. So you messed up, hey, let's try again. and they come back next week and they're doing good. You get them a lot of praise and encouragement for doing well. They might get some kind of incentive for doing well, so they're recognized for doing well. We talk about what they did that was positive, and then they keep going. And as they make progress, they usually start being sober. But what happens when you start being sober? Good things start happening to you. You get better jobs. You get your kids back. You get a car. You get your driver's license. You start enjoying things that when you're in addiction, you're really never able to build a life like that. And so the accountability helps them keep moving. And so it's a very high level of supervision, and it takes at least a year and a half to graduate. And so they make progress in the program. Each phase has different kinds of requirements and different requirements to get to the next phase. But it's all about more of a holistic approach, and there's a lot of accountability. So some people are like, well, of course you're supposed to stay sober. Why are you praising someone for staying sober? Something they should have to do anyway. Well, yeah, I know, but if you start really understanding what's going on inside the brain of someone with addiction, most people would say things like, well, they've lost their house, their car, their kids. They're certainly not in their right mind. Who in their right mind would do that? And yet they turn around and say, well, why don't they just stop? If they could just stop, they probably would have, because no one in their right mind would be doing that. So you've got to have the patience. One of the words we use is called moral humility. So you've got to have humility and patience. There's small j justice, which is justice for, okay, you stole the car. Here's your range of punishment. You're held accountable for that. I think capital J justice is looking at the big picture. What are we really trying to accomplish? Creating a healthy person that stays in our community, that sets them up for a long-term success, and understanding that someone with addiction, you can almost always trace it back to certain factors that they don't control. So we're now learning that trauma, a lot of high adverse childhood experiences have a big role in people that end up continuing using substances despite harm. Genetics play a role. People are self-medicating the symptoms of mental illness. Or often you find people that started they develop these patterns when they were 12, 13, 14 years old, and those are things that, you don't choose your genetics, you don't choose your parents, you don't choose to have trauma, you don't choose to have mental illness, but if you trace it back long enough, someone with addiction, you'll always find those things in their background. So capital J justice is looking at the big picture and how do we really address the underlying issues, and helping them get stable and a job and productive and enjoying a life of recovery. And when you compare that to incarceration, it costs far less and it works a lot better. So, our former commissioner, Terry White, gave me a slide several years ago that just says, you can look at somebody to treat them in a treatment court, cost about $5,000 a year to treat someone in a treatment court, compared to about $20,000 to $25,000 a year to incarcerate them. Well, and then you compare the recidivism rates or the success rates, you have far lower recidivism, people that graduate a treatment court, as someone who's just gone to do a prison sentence. So, when you go to prison, and believe me, there are some people that do need to be there, but it tends to be a graduate school for criminality.
We've got about 45 seconds, just want to let you know in this segment. Yeah.
You end up becoming like the people you spend time with. So if you just spent 3 or 4 years in prison, you're going to come out being a little bit more like the people that you went in with, and they come back. Most people, like 92% of people that go to prison, come back and live with us in our community. So who do you want living with you? Somebody who's healthy, stable, sober to the job, or somebody who's just been out of prison, a little bit more criminogenic than when they went in? So.
We're going to have you back.
I'd love to come.
Yeah, we just barely scratched the surface.
Judge Kenneth Stoner, our guest today on The Verdict. Thanks for your work, and please thank everyone down at the courthouse for us who's involved in these programs. Kent and I'll have a final word when we return.
Yeah, thanks, Judge.
This is the epidemic of my generation. This is my HIV. This is my Black Plague.
In the midst of one of our state's largest crises,
Oklahomans are dying from this preventable and treatable disease on a daily basis.
We believe there's hope.
That little pill will cause destruction through your whole life.
Watch the entire award-winning 9-part docuseries Killing Pain, made available by Fighting Addiction Through Education at killingpain.com.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love. But sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be Mom and Dad.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
Welcome back to the set of the verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. Our guest today was District Judge Kenneth Stoner.
Yeah, Judge Stoner's just doing a magnificent job, as one would expect, seeing his past history. He runs a good ship. They have something like 800 people in Oklahoma County program at any given time. And keep in mind that those numbers are that 83% of those 800, which is about 640 people, graduate. And the recidivism rate is only about 7%. So the net return to our population of people who are better ready to live good, productive lives is enormous considering resources.
We'll be back with another show next week. We hope to have Judge Stoner on a future edition where he can tell us more about these programs. We'll see you then.